Ellen. Ellen just waved. Hello, I am Alex Bozanovic. I am not Johanna Madronda, who typically does these interviews, but the reopening of society has her going back to work, so I'm filling in for her tonight. I will be interviewing Ryan Schutt. He's a very funny comic out of New York. He's been on all kinds of stuff. He's been on like Gotham Live and all of the podcasts. I was going Ellen. Ellen just waved at me. So we're just hanging out. We're waiting for Ryan to join me here in the room, and then we'll have a chat about comedy and all kinds of stuff. Life. Who knows? Who knows where the conversation's going to go? I met Ryan a couple years ago. He was putting together like a little Midwest run, and Alex Price, he is a comic who at the time was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, but now he's out of Indianapolis. He messaged me to see if I could help him set up a show here in Detroit, so I put some stuff together for him. It was a lot of fun. It was great. He came back like, I don't know, about a year and a half ago. He was like one of the first headliners that we booked at the Independent. He came in while we were still kind of like in our soft open phase. He was great. He killed it. He was probably, I mean, even still, maybe one of the best shows that we've had. It was very funny. Had a ton of people. It was pretty great. I keep getting notifications coming up on my phone. It's weird. It's going Amber. Amber just joined the video. There's 3 of us now. It's great. This will go up later on YouTube. We'll put it on our channel there. So if you want to rewatch it, or if you missed a part or whatever, you can go back and check it out. It'll be here on our Instagram page as well. But yeah, just hanging out, waiting for Ryan. I was gonna do the full green screen behind me, but then I figured like people could probably take that and like do weird things to me. So I decided again. Now they can only like do partial weird things now because like you got all the stuff around. But you know, whatever, we'll figure it out. Ryan, we're still waiting for Ryan to hop on. I don't know, man. We we're itching to open back up. You know, we felt like we had some, we had like a run of really, really great shows right before the quarantine and everything. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of great comics. We were getting great crowds. People were having a great time. It was kind of a bummer to have to like shut down, but obviously we're not gonna put people at risk. Like nobody is. That would be ridiculous to do that. But yeah, we're really we can't wait to get back out there. I think we all kind of like chat with each other online, and we're all kind of like itching to do these do some new bits, get on stage, have some fun. But yeah, just doing this, chatting online with each other now. That's what we're kind of in. And here we go. We got Ryan. Let me see if I can connecting.
Oh, what's
Hey,
up?
what's up,
Big
man?
dog?
Not much. How are you doing?
Good. So it's just basically a FaceTime call at this point, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all. That's what comedy's been reduced to, right? Just a series of FaceTime calls.
Yeah, that's been my experience, man. How's Detroit, dude?
Detroit. I mean, it was one of the worst hit areas.
Fuck.
But our numbers, they've been going down. That's why everything's kind of like opening back up again. But like you know, I honestly I haven't been in the city since it all started. Like I've been kind of like way out in the suburbs, so it hasn't really been hitting me as hard as it's been hitting some other people that I've been talking to.
Yeah,
But
well, yeah. I mean, it's all very car like oriented out there, so I feel like there isn't like the same risk of like
yeah,
pedestrian. There isn't like public transportation and shit out there. So, but yeah,
yeah,
that's a bummer, man.
yeah. I mean, as long Detroit's the kind of city that like as long as you don't have to be in the city between like 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.,
Yeah,
you're probably gonna be fine. You know,
yeah, yeah.
that's probably like the high risk time in Detroit.
Hmm. That's good. Um,
Yeah.
so you're saying Polish Village isn't open again yet?
Not at the moment, but you know,
Fuck.
I'm very like I think that one's gonna survive. Like I hope that one survives. It better
Good.
survive. I
Yeah.
need that one. I need that one to survive.
Yeah. No, they probably own the building or some shit.
Oh yeah,
It's like a very old school ass seeming restaurant.
yeah,
Is there a Polish mafia
yeah.
in Detroit?
I would assume there is.
At some point there had to be something.
Yeah,
Right.
there had to be the big thing in Detroit like way back in the day was like the Purple Gang. That was like the big like Jewish mafia. Like they kind of like
Interesting.
ran it all, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, we've been having people that we've had come through the club like headlining and just like doing spots here and there. We've been
Yeah.
having them on the feed here, just to kind of like talk comedy, kind of like the idea of what we do is to kind of like it kind of be like a thing where like you give advice to like new comics just starting out. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Uh,
Well, I think anything I could say is at best obsolete at this point now. So, but yeah, fuck it. I'll say I'll run my dumbass mouth. Why not?
all right. Well, let's go back to pre-comedy Ryan. Like where was Ryan like right before he started doing stand up?
I was in DC. I graduated college in 2009. So honestly, a job market not unlike the one that exists right at this very moment.
Yeah,
Although I feel like this one actually will probably be worse somehow.
yeah.
But yeah, so I originally moved back to DC. I went to college and I grew up in DC, and I went to college in California. And I moved back there because I wanted to do foreign policy stuff. That was like what I vaguely studied in college, and I was I my general um, I guess desire was to work in African foreign policy, just because that I speak a bunch of different languages, and that's like the region that matched up best with my linguistic ability. But that was horrible. I couldn't. It was impossible to get a job without a graduate degree, which I didn't have. Or basically, I remember like I went in for an interview at this like what in retrospect was probably just a CIA front, but it was like this place where they were like basically they were looking at my resume and they were like, okay, so um, have you spent like years like in the region? And I'm like, no. They're like, okay, are you a former like military or like a police officer? And I'm like, no. They're like, okay, or do you have any intent to go to graduate school soon, or do you have like an advanced degree? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, then what do you want us to do with you? And I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. And so yeah, I was just kind of bumming around DC and like just trying to get whatever jobs would pay me money. And in the midst of all that, I guess I think part of what drove me into stand up was it was always something that I wanted to do, and people always thought it was funny. But yeah, I guess it was so fucking hard to get any kind of job that I was like, I might as well do something that seems interesting and fun because um, it fucking sucks just getting an office job that I don't even really want. So um, I was right about the interesting part. I'm not sure about the fun part, but that's how I got started in comedy. And there was and it also the thing is too. I mean, when I was just starting out in DC, the stand up scene was it existed, but and there's some really great comics that came out of DC that were around then, like people like Aparna and Sherla and Seton Smith and Rory Scovel and um, probably a few others. Hampton Yount's is a big one, but it wasn't nearly as fleshed out and developed as it is now. So
Nice.
maybe I'm getting ahead of uh, what you're going to ask next. But
Oh,
so
no, I mean,
when I,
this was actually what I was going to ask next. Was like, what was the scene like at the time? Like,
yeah,
was
well,
there a couple bar shows here and there? Were like, what were the clubs like stuff like that?
so you could get in a couple of like there were bar shows, of course. There were like but like as I'm sure the case probably is in Detroit. This is also just kind of the case in like pretty much every scene that isn't fucking Chicago or LA or New York. Like the open mics were like by the standards of those cities like proper shows.
Yeah.
And so but there were like you could get up at best like 4 nights a week. You know what I mean? And like there were a couple nights where there were multiple things going on. And then there was the DC Improv, which was great and still is great and is for my money the best club in the country. But back when I was starting, it was really fucking hard to get in. The door opened once a year to basically audition for host spots. And it was that way pretty much until I left DC. And then they realized, I think once Big Hunt sort of became essentially a club and really went legit, they realized, oh, fuck, there's a lot of talent in the city. We're also like just not making as much money as we could. So they developed sort of like a more like established pipeline to kind of get into the club. But yeah, hold on one second. I'm getting fucking all these texts from.
We froze for a second, but that's you deal with that in the age of Corona. Gotta figure the technology out. Once we get on 5G, I guess we won't have to worry about this because we'll either all be dead or it'll just work, really quick and fast and smooth. But we will get Ryan back here in 1 second. Just pick up where we left off. We'll keep talking about where he was at when he started in DC. Probably get a little bit of insight on what got him thinking about. Got fucked up by some texts. All right, yeah, just come back in. Let me see if I can like do something here. I can probably send you that.
Sorry
All
about
right,
that,
we're
man.
back.
Hey, what's up? Sorry, I fucking like I was getting all these like texts from like an unknown number, and like my landlord in my building is a real fucking prick, and so sometimes I just get bombarded over random horseshit. So I just had to make sure. Anyways, back to it. What was I rambling about? The improv and shit. So
Yeah, you're talking about the improv, like really hard to get into, and then they like kind of built like a pipeline because they realized there were a lot of people,
yeah, and then so
a
there was
lot of
that place,
talent in the city.
there's the DC Draft House too, and then as time went on, like Big Hunt became like a proper club, and it became sort of like because the thing about the DC Improv is like it was like a proper like A room, meaning like the people that it brought through were like basically people who were like big stand-ups or like people that had been on sitcoms and shit. And so there weren't like at the time there weren't really spots for people that were like big in New York and LA, but didn't
Yeah.
necessarily have a draw. And so Big Hunt kind of filled that need. Um, and so yeah, like that was basically the landscape. And so what I was driving at before though is that in order to get enough stage time to like get kind of good, you or I shouldn't say you, but all the people that were pretty good, they all did improv. Just because like it was just a way to get more stage time. And certainly
Yeah.
for me, I didn't really do any like theater or anything in college or in high school, and I wasn't really comfortable on stage. So it's a thing where like I knew I could be funny, but it was like you just had to. I just like looking like I'm not having a fucking panic attack on stage like took some time, and so it was just like
Yeah.
I had to get the reps from. I mean, honestly, just going up and bombing my fucking tits off for a while. Like that's basically, and then
Yeah.
you realize like, oh, this isn't that scary, and you've done it before. And then once you basically have had your ego forcefully stripped from your personality, then you can
Yeah.
start to build a new kind of ego. But yeah, so anyways, that's how I got started there.
Cool. So like at what point in all of that did you kind of like feel like this is something that I want to like really commit to, and where you decided like, all right, I'm gonna move on now. And did you go right from DC to New York, or were there like stops before that?
So I think the moment when I was like, I guess I'm gonna figure out if I'm actually good, is there was this like contest. I was about a year and a half in, and they just sort of did this like citywide contest in DC that was like run by like the main bookers. I shouldn't say the main bookers, but like they had like the hottest room in DC at the time. And I was just like, all right, like if you're really fucking about it, and like you're real, like if you think you're good, you should at least do well in this, if not win. And I won. And it
Oh,
was like
nice.
it was pretty much all the comics that were active in DC at the time were in it, and like through a process of elimination. I mean, look, competitions are horseshit for the most part, but this one worked out, and so like I made a bunch of money, I got a bunch of spots. It kind of put me on like the radar of people who were booking the clubs and stuff, and like
Yeah.
that's I didn't get in right away from that, but like they were like, all right, well here's somebody like whose name isn't people's mouths, and so I was like, all right, that wasn't like when I was like I'm gonna become a professional, but and then like but just like continuing to do well in DC and like kind of rising up and like doing a ton of spots and like doing festivals and stuff, and once I got into the improv, which took a minute, um, I started getting tons of spots there. I was like, okay, well, this is something. And I remember, and I was always kind of like planning on going to New York, but I just was sort of like waiting for like the invite, which is a terrible way to do anything in your life. But
Yeah. I was gonna ask, is that do you recommend people just oh, all right, you're back.
yeah, sorry.
You recommend like people just like if you're starting off in like we'll say Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like you're doing okay in Detroit, but you're still probably not ready, for like professional work or whatever. Would you recommend just doing the jump and going to New York or LA or like one of the big hubs or anything like that? Or would you recommend staying where you are and like really just kind of like honing it and crafting it and then going?
Well, I mean, before the pandemic, I would say that, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say that that's smart. I mean, Chicago's a really good place. That's sort of like an interim city. Also, I
Mhm.
would say like if you go to Chicago and do well in Chicago, there's like such a well-established pipeline of people. Not to mention the fact that I think you can actually like get some level of industry attention there.
Mhm.
Um, it's a good place to go. So it's like it's not New York, it's not LA, but like if you go there and you do well, you definitely have a leg up on people when you do go to New York and LA, and you likely know a lot of those people, and I think you probably get the chance to like work the road a little more, and then also just like make connections with people that are in New York and LA. So when you go, you have people to reach out to. But I mean, now that everything's fucked, I mean, also, I mean, like, also, comedy was just sort of generally moving online, anyways. I mean, it's sort of like a trite thing to say, but like it was, but now it's 100% true. And I mean, even like pretty big clubs in New York, and just like rooms on the road and shit, like you just watch them scrambling
Mhm.
to figure out how the fuck to stay alive.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, from my outside perspective, like I mean, I really hope they figure it out because like from my external perspective, it just seems like they're just figuring out a way to like not bleed out quite as aggressively. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I mean, comedy clubs are just a mixture of two dumbass business models to begin with, which is like a bar and a restaurant and like a live performance. I guess it's three. And so, even under ideal circumstances, it's a pretty fucking stupid business to go into. I mean, also the thing that's funny too is like we know like the history of comedy clubs, like a lot of them were conceived originally as like ways for the mob to launder money, and so they were never
Yeah.
really meant to be like a
Yeah. Yeah.
like profitable business.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I think in places like in the Midwest and shit, where like live entertainment options aren't quite as robust as like in your big cities, comedy clubs I think do really well, and like are like I love all the clubs I've worked in the Midwest. Like they're fucking fun.
Yeah.
Whereas you go to places outside bigger cities, and a lot of times, or in big cities, and you're like, this is fucking hard. It's like unless they have like a fire fucking lineup, it's
Yeah.
really tough to get audiences and stuff. And so yeah, so I don't know, man. I mean, that's I mean, but the whole thing is like start some weird shit where you develop a fan base on social media, and then eventually you monetize it through Patreon and advertising and merch and shit. Um, that's the model for all creative shit. I mean, and it's like you get fans however the fuck you can. I clearly am struggling with that, but you know, and so and like I mean, live performance was the stupidest thing to try to get good at. Like it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely I'm feeling that myself lately. Like
Yeah.
I should have just been one of those guys that was just online constantly trolling. I feel like I'd be way further along.
Yeah, that was the smart thing to do, is to be a
Yeah, yeah,
shithead on Twitter for fucking, the years prior to this.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean the thing is too, like watching Zoom shows and shit. I haven't been to too many just because they've been fucking tough. I mean, there obviously people are still trying to figure out how to make it work. I've
yeah,
seen like versions of Zoom things that obviously they're not the same as what they originally were, but like you see the potential, and not with comedy, but have you seen those like different like musical artists that do like the verses thing? So it's like Erica Badu versus Jill Scott, or
yeah, yeah,
like the Beanie Man show. Like that shit was tight. Like I was having a good time. It's obviously it's not nearly the same thing as like going to a club and watching it live, but I'm like,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is fun. Like I would like to see more of this shit. But that's also just yet another way in which music is far more popular and fun than comedy is. um,
So
I and like I tuned in. I won't say who, but I tuned into like this like a couple of big comedian, like really big comedians, like kind of doing something like this,
yeah,
and it was awful. I mean, it was just a lot of like showbiz horse shit, and I was just like,
yeah,
I this isn't funny, and you're
yeah,
watching
I
people just do Hollywood shit. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. People are definitely gonna have to figure out how to how to do this, because like the normal like show business on stage, kind of like messing around with people and whatever. That's not going to work in this environment because like
Nope.
even in a Zoom show, like you can see the people, you can see the squares with their faces and stuff, and you see them laughing, but there's just like a disconnect, like
Of course.
there's a rhythm that you just can't get into that way that you can when they're like sitting in front of you.
Well, also you're ultimately like just staring into a fucking phone. I like this quarantine, man, has like made me so like attached to my fucking phone, even more so than I already was, and I hate it so much. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I know what you mean. I've seen like in Queens they're doing like diner shows. Um
Okay.
which I mean, I'm sure you've done comedy outside. It's one of the worst environments to do comedy in.
Yeah,
Everybody's
it's
like in
so
their
hard.
fucking car. It's just like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
Um, the thing is though too is like what sort of happened in the midst of all this, like, is you do start to see the distinction between comedians that um, enjoyed connecting with an audience and comedians who were just like, look at me, like it's like a thing where like you could tell when they were performing. It's just like it doesn't really matter like what the audience
Yeah.
like what their experience is for you and like what their reaction is. Like you just are getting off on having people look at you and pay attention
Yeah,
to you.
yeah.
And sadly, that latter group is doing far better, I think, than this. Because like, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, for me, the Zoom shit, I'm like, this is not the same thing. Doesn't satisfy the same urge. As
Yeah.
neither does like making little videos. tweeting never had. So it's just a thing where I'm like, fuck, I really just enjoyed, you know, the live performance, and uh, either it's got to come back or I got to figure something out.
Yeah,
If I'm gonna keep doing it
yeah.
in comedy, I mean, maybe this force majeure is the sign that's like, all right, time to fucking learn how to code, Ryan. you know, so
Um, so I want to like loop back real quick because you were talking about comedy clubs trying to figure out how to make like this work.
yeah.
Do you think like this is gonna kind of just be like a temporary thing until I mean, I don't think anything's ever going to go back to normal,
hmm
but like I think eventually things will kind of like stabilize. Like, do you think this is just something to fill in that time? And then once we kind of like figure it out, like it's going to go back to some semblance of like what we were doing? Or do you think like this is just it? This is just how it's going to be from now on?
I really don't know. I mean, I think, I mean, it just speculating wildly and speaking straight out of my ass.
I mean,
I
that's
mean,
what we like here at the Independent Comedy Club, so go for it.
I think, I think nothing will, no kind of permanent progress can be made until a vaccine is developed. I think
Mhm.
number one. I mean, also just from my perspective, whether even if a vaccine gets developed, like I was saying before, a comedy club, like owning a comedy club and keeping one open is a shit business to begin with. It's really
Yeah.
fucking hard, and I think witnessing, the just an event like this um, makes people much more risk averse to shit like that. So I think um, like like what my buddy in DC, the Sean Joyce, like the way that he ran everything was really smart in that he basically like Big Hunt was like his club, but Big Hunt was a business independent of him. He just was like a production company that set up shows and venues, and so I think he was a little more resilient and could weather shit like this better, hopefully.
Hmm.
Um, because he's not paying a staff really. I think he had a very minor staff. Um, wasn't paying for brick and mortar. Didn't have to stock a bar. I think advertising expenditures were like pretty minimal. I mean, he fucking like really built that shit from like the grassroots really. And I think it was just again I don't know what his finances look like, but it seemed like it was just all fucking cream like compared to like all the fucking shit that all the investments you have to make in a comedy club normally were like just like keeping the lights on, like that's a lot of money. So I think perhaps like once bars and restaurants and stuff open, there's a possibility that somebody like behaves that way. I mean, it kind of seems like that's what you guys were doing with like Sellerman's and shit, where it's just like we got our following, of people that come every week. Like we got our mailing list because like that's the thing with like entertainment really, and honestly, like you're just kind of monetizing a mailing list. Like it takes different forms,
Yeah.
but the strongest or like the best asset that a lot of comedians have as far as like selling tickets is just some kind of a mailing list.
Yeah.
Um, so as I don't know what the performance spaces look like as far as live performance goes. Like I mean, I'm not super optimistic about comedy clubs. I really hope they figure it out, but I mean, from what I can tell, it's going to be very tough.
Yeah.
And I'm not particularly a particularly smart business guy. So
Well, I mean, from the sound of it, it just sounds like we need a strong mafia again.
yeah, listen,
Is
we need organized crime to have a need for laundering money again.
Yeah, like if we
So
if
Arthur
we
should prop up a business.
yeah, I mean, we keep passing like legislation and stuff to make like big like Walmart and all those companies great, and we
Mm-hmm.
think that's going to fix the country, but really it's just like giving money to the mob. Like we need the
Yeah.
mob more deeply entrenched in the things that we're doing.
Yeah, make like everyday items illegal so that a cartel develops and they can, start profiting and
Yeah,
clean
but
so
yeah,
that
but
I
like
can talk about my dick to strangers.
Yeah, yeah, like illegal, but like with a wink, like
Yeah,
you're not supposed to have that, you know.
right.
All right. Well, I mean, we've been doing this, I think, for about a half hour. I don't know. Do you have anything else that you want to like kind of put out there for any like young comics that might be trying to climb up the ladder right now?
Follow me on Instagram. Now, fucking, I don't know, man. Your guess is as good as mine. Good luck to you because it's fucking brutal. Like, I mean, there's like, this shit's always changing. This is a particularly big change right now, and so you have to be flexible and adaptable and be willing to shift your strategy and adopt new approaches. That's the only skill that really I think carries you through. People stopped being funny fucking years ago, so just get really good at social media, and
Yeah.
and let me open for you when you get huge on TikTok.
All right. Well, hey man, thanks so much
Yeah,
for
dude. Of
chatting with me right now.
course.
What was that?
I said, of course, man.
Oh yeah, 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 for sure. When this all like if this all straightens itself out and we figure it out, we will absolutely have you back at the Independent.
Please, I'd
Um,
love to. It was one of my favorite weekends that year.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, thanks for chatting with us, man.
All right, buddy, stay safe.
Yep, you too, dude.
All right, man.
Yep. And that was Ryan Schutt, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. You can follow Ryan on Instagram and Twitter. His handle is Ryschutt, Ryschutt. Keep watching these videos. Hopefully, we can bring you even more comics and more insights. And that's the video for tonight. Thanks for tuning in, guys.